So I've gotten a lot of response on people having different ideas for things I do video on, and I'm going to try to get to as many of those as I can. I did a wacky worm, a jerkbait rod last week. Some of them are going to be shorter because the content's not that long, and some of them will be longer. So if you get the opportunity, go check out my YouTube page, Clark Wendlandt Pro Bass Fishing. Hit the subscribe button. A lot of this content's going to end up there. So one of the ones that was given to me recently is how do you fish for bass that are bedding or on beds in dirtier water where you can't see them, where you can't sight fish? Well, that's a pretty interesting problem. Used to be everybody fished. Nobody looked at them. I'm talking about, say, 20 years ago, almost nobody actually sight fished. They actually just threw baits and worked them in. What happens in dirty water is typically bass are pretty aggressive. They're wanting to protect that bed. They're not being disturbed by boats coming by, seeing people. So if you can get a bait on the bed, they'll bite. One thing is you got to be pretty thorough. And what baits do you throw? Well, for me, first of all, in dirty water, I like dark colors. Usually I'm a green pumpkin guy, threw green pumpkin in lots of situations. But in dirty water, I'm almost always black, blue, black, red. That's it. If I'm going to throw a soft plastic, if I'm going to throw a vibrating jig or a spinnerbait, I'm going to throw chartreuse and white, maybe white. I don't have a whole lot of different colors that I'm going to throw because I've got confidence that those are going to catch them. If your confidence is in the color you're throwing, we'll go with that color because confidence really is key in being able to work a bait, present it correctly, and get the maximum number of bites. So I'm going to talk about a few baits that I really like to fish. The very best setup for fishing for spawning fish is usually a Texas rig worm. Something like an 1/8, 3/16 or a quarter, maybe 5/16 ounce weight, just depending on how deep you're fishing. But I would say the go-to would be a 3/16 ounce weight. Now, what bait do you throw? Well, I got a couple different that I like the very most. If I'm actually going to be, pitching up to the bank or casting up to the bank and working it in. I'm talking about working it through sticks, working it through logs, working it through shallow grass. I'm actually going to be moving it on the bottom, hoping that bait crosses that bed. And if I do get a bite, hopefully when I set the hook, I catch it. And if you don't, always during the spawn, go back into that same spot. If they're garden fry, a lot of times they'll bite twice. If they're bedding, a lot of times they'll bite again. So you can get a bite from the exact same spot you missed one in just the cast before. This bait right here is a Strike King Game Hog. Now, the Game Hog is just a little creature bait. I really like this bait right here. When you work this bait, Texas rig, 3/16 ounce weight, it's got some action to it, and it's fairly small and compact. When fish are on beds, small, compact baits are a lot of times the very best because what happens is that a fish may just bite the tail of it, or he just might bite the edge of the bait. I see it all the time when I'm actually sight fishing. They just don't get the whole bait, and that's why you miss it. They're trying to get that bait off the bed. Somehow, basically, you're wanting to pull that bait through there. I'm making little hops, as I'm working my bait, just basically small hops. Now, the other bait that I would really pick is a Strike King shimmy stick, and I rigged this one also Texas rig, 3/16 ounce weight. Variety of different hooks work really well. Probably my very favorite hook in just about every situation is an Owner Jungle Hook. The Jungle Hook is an extremely strong hook, not that big diameter. It's made out of Zowire. This hook will flat catch them. I see more and more and more fishermen go into this hook because right now it's by far the best one on the market. Now, what I'm doing in these situations is I'm trying to imagine where one would bed. If you see a little hole like in reeds or next to or in the fork of a tree, wherever you can imagine a fish bedding. So I'm liking a lot of pitches, dragging it through those places, and a lot of that is just trial and error. You're going to find areas that are better and areas that are not. The fish start spawning in the very backs of the creeks first, and then they work their way out to where they might even be spawning on the main lake. That's your job as a fisherman to figure that kind of stuff out. But as far as good baits go, drag a Texas rig along those areas, fish it fairly slow, go to dark colors, and you're going to catch a lot of fish.